to take a second and think about your childhood. Cast your mind back to those simpler days when all we had to do to fix all of our ecological problems was to remember a conveniently alliterative phrase. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Ah, what a time. Ah, what a scam. Plastic recycling is the red herring of the century. It brilliantly messages us away from holding the companies that are creating the pollution accountable, and instead urges us to police our friends, our families, and ourselves. The Washington Post released a study that said over the last 20 years, with recycling programs in full swing, plastic waste has doubled. It makes sense, because even when we throw plastic waste into the recycling bin, less than 10% of it gets recycled. And then it has an even slimmer chance of making it around that waste stream merry-go-round again, because plastic degrades over time. But most importantly, recycling plastic is not as cheap as making new plastic. So, boo-hoo, future generations, we are chasing that dollar. Listen, if plastic recycling were actually the solution, I would be thrilled. Because as a former child myself, I can tell you that I recycled diligently, anxiously, and compulsively. And meanwhile, ExxonMobil still increased their profits while still increasing plastic pollution. So why do we sedate our children with the fairy tale that plastic is fine as long as we recycle it? And why do we continue to saddle them with the responsibility of figuring out what to do with it all? Well, because marketing works. Former plastic lobbyist Larry Thomas shared, and I quote, "If the public thinks recycling is working, then they aren't going to be as concerned about the environment." Gotcha! We want to feel helpful. We want to feel like what we're doing is making a difference. And how good does it feel to take a swash of plastic garbage and throw it in the recycling and forget it ever existed? And so we wish cycle, and we try to remember what those numbers mean. And we rinse, and we dry, and we clean, and we cuddle, and we affirm, and we worship those plastic containers before we throw them in that big blue plastic reincarnation chamber. But at this point, we cannot ignore the ever-growing avalanche of plastic pollution that's inundating our world. And neither can the plastics industry. And so, in order to get in front of that next PR crisis, they're heading to schools. PragerU, a media company founded by fracking billionaires in Texas, has created an educational cartoon for kids about the wonders of plastic, how good it is for people and the world. Braskem, a petrochemical company this time, is currently funding a program whose motto is changing the perception of plastics one classroom at a time. Yeah. We are up against a propaganda machine that is so powerful that it has duped all of us into becoming its mouthpiece. So, to my fellow educators out there, I am begging you, stop teaching recycling as the solution to plastic pollution. Thank you. What we need to be teaching is much deeper. We can't tell a story by starting at the very end. We need to tell the whole story. We need to start our story where it actually begins, in fossil fuel deposits underground, because plastic is made out of crude oil and methane gas. So when we take that Scooby-Doo villain mask off of plastic pollution, we see that it's the same fossil fuel companies that tricked us into energy dependence, and they're at it again under a different alias. We need to keep the timeline of our story accurate, because synthetic plastics, as a concept, are less than 150 years old. So this staple in our lives that we have such a hard time living without is younger than airplanes, many trees still standing today, and a tortoise named Jonathan. We need to set our story in the countless communities that have been sacrificed to sky-high cancer rates and debilitating autoimmune diseases, where plastic is manufactured into its sellable forms. Or we could set it in the countless communities in the global south, where the plastic is sent when it inevitably cannot be recycled. We need to remember that we are characters in this story too, because everything that happens to the environment happens to us. Microplastics are not some faraway threat only to marine animals. They are inside all of us. And every time that we microwave Tupperware or wash our polyester clothes, we're exposing ourselves to more of those particles and those chemicals. And finally, we need to dramatically reveal that the solution to this is to stop producing more virgin plastics. That's it. Not force our kids to make crafts with the endless stream of it. In order to stop plastic pollution, we need to stop the plastics industry. And stopping the plastics industry requires collective action. But fossil fuel advertising has got us so good that many of us, including children, don't even really know what that looks like. A study done by the Aspen Institute surveyed teenagers in the United States, and they asked them, what is the most impactful action you can take to combat climate change? And 57% of them responded with, you guessed it, recycling! So, educators, we've got our work cut out for us. Marketing works, but so does good quality education. And if anyone is good at making meaningful learning moments under completely unrealistic expectations, it's teachers. So what can we do? Instead of teaching those 3 R's, we can teach actual strategies to turn off the plastic tap. We can teach our students to boycott, to lobby, and to divest. We can teach them to refuse plastic and to spot greenwashing, while introducing them to alternatives that work with our carbon budget rather than against it. We can teach success stories from across the world, including the fight for a global plastics treaty. And we can introduce them to role models, like the people that you've seen all day on this stage, who are standing up to plastic companies and developing sustainable solutions that fit within a circular economy. We can teach our students to need each other more, because when we live in community, borrowing, mending, trading, handing down, and giving each other things, we need to buy less stuff. And finally, we can teach our students to imagine a future that is so free from plastics that when future children hear the phrase reduce, reuse, recycle, they will be able to remember the whole story of plastic pollution, which by then will be a story of the past. Thank you.